Well, g'day, and here's my third. I thought I'd do three little ones today instead of one big one. This is my third of my short videos. Hopefully you'll tune in till the end. According to YouTube, people only watch 10 or 15 minutes and they turn me off, and I'm okay with that. Maybe you get everything out of it you need to get out of it in 10 minutes. Alright, so here we go. Ready? This one's about the spiritual path, the spiritual process and everything, because I have people asking me all the time, how do I begin? Right, where do I begin? How do I start my spiritual journey? And it's hard at first because your mind is so loaded with everything of the world, and you're trying to use that worldly mind to understand non-worldly ideas. And all of a sudden you're thrust into this whole new sphere of education, and you can't do it. You can't begin a spiritual path properly unless you are willing to undertake some kind of education on the matter. Doesn't matter what curriculums you use, as long as they're kind of universal. But whether you're a Buddhist or a Christian or a nothing at all, but doing your own investigation, or a Hindu or a Muslim, doesn't matter. These things don't matter. All that matters is that you're making an effort to learn about your path to God, your path to Source, your path to where you already are and can only ever be. Which I know sounds paradoxical, and it is, but we deal with things where we find ourselves, and we try not to get too lofty in the spiritual concepts of things, because it's easy to wander around saying, oh, the world's just a dream, isn't it? Why don't we don't have to worry about anything? We can do whatever we want. It's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but the law of mind that governs everything is that you're going to get the results of your own thinking. And just because you've decided to play at being spiritual doesn't mean that all of a sudden the world's going to turn a blind eye and pat you on the back and go, oh, well done, your spirit, you can do anything now. Because you can't. You have this thing called karma, this residual kind of cellular genetic fuck-uppery that's inside of you as a memory retention of a dark frame of reference that recalls as its foundations the idea of death, which pervades everything. All right, so the spiritual path is one of, I wouldn't say escaping death, because that doorway has already been opened, that there's no need for you to escape something that isn't real, but of seeing within yourself and for yourself that there is no such thing as death, and in that going beyond your fear of death to what you're truly afraid of, which is love. Because if God is everything, the only thing you could possibly ever be afraid of is love. Right? And I know that makes sense, right? But we put all this other stuff, well, I'm not afraid of love, that's ridiculous, I'm looking for the best loving partner, whatever, and thing. That's not love, that's just a chemical reaction in the mind that, that person ticks all the boxes, and woo, that must be love. It's like, well, that's an idea of love in limitation. If it's true love, it doesn't matter what that person looks like, and that's the part, that's where the rubber hits the road, and you have to look at it and go, holy fuck, I'm not a saint. There's some tough calls in the spiritual path, you got to look at everything honestly. But anyway, so here we go, my diorama, my diagram. Here's the world down here. I've got a red pen to highlight things. The world. And we're seemingly born into the world somewhere in the middle of the bloody Atlantic Ocean there, apparently. But born into the world. The reality of things is, however, right, that, Pedro just kicked my thing there. I'm just going to move this. I've got Pedro up here kicking, my puppy, having a sleep here beside me. Don't worry about all that. That was the last two short videos. The reality of the situation is, however, we're somewhere altogether completely different, right, called eternity. Oops, don't know if you can see my eternity dot down there. Dreaming that we're here in the world. So we're actually over here, and I'm going to use over here as a reference because it's hard to talk about being in a different state, in a different, I don't want to say dimension, but that's probably a good way to kind of try to explain it. We're in a different frame of mind, a different state of mind, a different experience of mind as reality, as eternal and limitless and spirit, right? And dreaming that we're here, or imagining that we're here in this physical environment. And so the spiritual path then is one of being fed up with going around and around and around the mulberry bush of the world experience here every 365 days, and within that everything that, you know. And if you watch your life experiences on a daily, weekly, monthly thing and pay attention to them, like train yourself to pay attention to them, you'll realise they repeat. Same shit, different day. It might be a different person playing the scenario, but they'll have the same energetic signature. That person's just like that other person that pissed me off, blah blah blah. And eventually you realise that everything's a circle. Right? You keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, which is what insanity is. And then you get to a full stop. You're just like, fuck, I can't go on, I can't do this. I'm feeling so empty inside. I'm feeling so anxious about myself, my experience, my life. Nothing makes sense. I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm feeling depressed, maybe suicidal, all of these things. And if you don't kill yourself, maybe you'll start to look for answers and solutions, and you might hopefully come across some spiritual reference stuff that you'll be able to grab a hold of and make sense of, which is why I like A Course in Miracles, because it's just set out there in black and white and you can read it. And yes, it's heavy going at the start, but it's so just like, if A then B, so must be C, you know, like it's just flows so perfectly. Right? So the spiritual path, once you realise you've had a shit fucking experience in the world, you're done with pain and suffering and all of that, and you want something else, you want a better way, you begin a spiritual discipline. And I'm going to use A Course in Miracles since I've mentioned it, and it's my favourite book or reference book in the whole world at the moment. And what you're essentially doing is transiting. You're purifying your mind of the worldly way of thinking. It's like, I'm sick of thinking in terms of opposites of good and bad, right and wrong, mine and yours. I'm sick of thinking in that kind of a way, because that way only perpetuates itself. It's a cycle, the yin and yang. One follows the other, right? And it takes a miracle, literally hands together, pray for the healing of the mind that believes it is a body, right? Literally pray. I'm telling you, I say to people, you're going to need to pray for a miracle, and they look at me like I'm an idiot. It's like, you need to pray because prayer opens the mind. Prayer connects you through the Holy Spirit, which is my ladder. I've depicted this ladder here. This is just symbolic. It's not, there's no real ladder for anyone who's kind of like on the edge. All right. My ladder represents the Holy Spirit. When you pray, what you're actually in essence doing is keeping an open mind to the possibility of something beyond your own conscious awareness, right, going on in the world. It's like, I want to believe that there's a higher power and that there's something else going on here. And maybe you've had deja vu, maybe you've seen a ghost, maybe, you know, all these sorts of things trigger those ideas of something higher or something other than. So prayer is, I'm going to put some faith in something even though I don't know what it is, right? And through your participation and your efforts in prayer, you begin to get little glimpses at first of like, holy shit, I prayed for something in me to heal, right, of my thinking. I prayed for my thinking around this situation to heal, so I could just have peace in this relationship or situation, and boom shanka, something happened. Something changed and it was completely unexpected. Maybe that would have happened anyway. Maybe it wouldn't. See where I'm going? Right, so the spiritual path then is one of learning. Teaching and learning. You teach what you need to learn, and you teach it so you can get that reflection back, right? You teach it maybe verbally, like I'm teaching now perhaps, or maybe you teach it through dance, maybe you teach it through poetry. You're teaching that your presentation or your expression comes from a divine and a higher place, that you are spirit and you are not bound by the parameters that the world says you can do this, you can't do that, right? So the spiritual path then is one of transiting from a temporal mind where you believe what the world tells you about yourself, to taking on board in an idea of faith, the idea that perhaps I am spirit and not flesh, not this body. Right? Now Jesus says, I am the spirit, not the flesh, and so are you, and blah blah blah, and give up the world and follow me. So the spiritual discipline is one of giving up the world and following Jesus. Now it's a path of forgiveness, I've been walking around the world judging everyone and everything, and training my mind thereby to do that. Can you see that? Training my mind to judge. And it gets me nothing, right? There comes a certain point, and I have a feeling this video is going to go on a bit longer than the 10 or 15 minutes. Stay with me. This is good, I hope. Right? So that mind has been overtrained to judge, and it brings you nothing but struggle, suffering, stress, anxiety, because you're judging everything and weighing one thing up against, and the mind's just like this, blah, 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 blah. When you decide to put a stop to that and begin your spiritual journey, you go up the ladder, right? I'm going to leave the world behind. I'm going to go above the battleground. I want to look down on the world as the classroom that it is and begin to perceive in it the oneness and the unity in things rather than the separation in things that my judgment has taught me to see. So let's say I take the first step on the ladder, which might be, if you're an alcoholic, the admission that I'm powerless over my addiction and blah, blah, blah. Right? So admitting where you find yourself. No, I'm all fucked up. I need help. Right? Not help out there. I need help from within. I need something to happen in my mind, in my thinking, that affords me a window of peace and gives me a way wherein I can become aware of it in a conscious way that allows me to maintain it. Right? So each of these rungs on the ladder then is an opportunity to forgive myself for something of the world, right? So when Jesus says, give up the world and follow me, it's going to be, for most people, I think, in your mind, you're going to say, oh yeah, well, I'll follow you, Jesus, but what about my kids? What about? Let me just go and sell my shit in the market, and then, So each of these rungs on the ladder, and I'm just using them as rungs, gives you a higher, more elevated perception of the world, right? A better understanding, more knowledge, wisdom, wisdom's kind of thing. But anyway, more knowledge, more understanding. Every time you make an effort to forgive yourself for your judgments about the world in a situation that seems to show up, that's presenting you the idea or the temptation to believe that you're a victim or that something's wrong or whatever, every time you apply forgiveness of your thoughts about that situation to the situation and take a leap of faith up to the next rung through prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind that believes it's a body in that situation, right? Your view of the world becomes less important, right? And eventually you get so high up here that down here, don't know if you can see that one, the concerns about the world seem to fade away almost to nothing until eventually your spiritual determination has brought you so high up this imaginary ladder or has brought you a mastery of the ideas embodied in your peaceful pursuit to a stage where you can apply them to anything and be grateful for those the situations that give you that opportunity to do so. Your concerns about the world just fade out of view completely, entirely, as you learn to live entirely in faith. You stop worrying, you stop stressing. Right? Now, this ladder is the Holy Spirit, as I said before, or the Spirit of wholeness. But because we find ourselves in a situation where we seem to be separate from each other, there's a me and a you, and we forget that we are this singular mind here, appearing as a myriad or many things, now undergoing this awakening process called the resurrection that was initiated or kick-started by Jesus 2,000 odd years ago when he overcome death and rose up from the grave and went, here, look, put your fingers in my... Here, Thomas. So we're living in the resurrection. Can you get a sense of how that actually is? I mean, you have to really put some learning in and understand how amazing it is. It's like it's bigger than an epoch. I think an epoch describes a certain period, or it's a finite point in something, but I'm trying to think of a word that describes how amazing it is. And one of the things that I always think makes me think how amazing it is that the old calendar BC to AD, it was such an incredible event. A man rising from the dead, rising from the tomb, and who had been declared null and void, 3 days earlier. And then, so it cracked the calendar, it changed the calendar. There was a BC and then Anno Domini, it's like before the resurrection and after the resurrection. Here's Jesus, all of a sudden, boom, we better start again. Now there's no death. Our last calendar was founded in death, and God damn it, we've got to stay. What's the day today? Day 1, Incredible stuff. I get so bloody flabbergasted about it, I guess. But all of those teachings bring you into an awareness of actually what's going on. What the hell is really the human purpose? It's like, well, time and space here, we come from this, we're asleep over here, and we're pursuing this thing called awakening, right? I don't awaken over here in the world. Spiritual awakening doesn't awaken me here, it awakens me here. All of a sudden I go pow, and I wake up over here, I look around, and it's like, holy cow, I'm one with everything. All of a sudden, over here, it's simultaneously, my physical vessel collapses to the floor, everybody goes, oh, he's dead. But all of a sudden you're experiencing your enlightenment over here, and then having experienced your enlightenment, you reanimate the body over here, and you come back and you go, hey, I'm enlightened, da-da-da-da-da, and everybody looks at you with a dumb look on their face and goes, what the fuck are you talking about? Hopefully not everybody. Hopefully, So, you don't awaken as an identity. You awaken as mind, because you are already awake. You're only remembering what you already are. But it seems to be that you have to go through this process of remembering, and the spiritual path is what that looks like. And eventually, as you leave behind all this emotionally loaded nonsense from the world of mine and yours and better and worse, all that emotionally attack and defense stuff, you leave all that behind, and you just sort of get higher and higher in your own vibration within yourself, and you just feel more lifted and more light and more in the grace of God, and you just you can't take anything seriously. It's really hard to take anything seriously. You're over here, and it's like, man, this is just a little aside on this one, but my enlightenment, that experience of waking up over here in the Godhead, let's say, or realizing my oneness in the Godhead, happened to me in 1997, and I could not stop laughing for weeks on end till my side split after that, just weeks and weeks of laughter. And even for months after, I would have these spontaneous, even for years really, I would have these spontaneous outbursts of laughter, which is the release of all of this temporal stuff. And I couldn't stop it. Everything in the world just seemed particularly ridiculous, and I couldn't believe that I'd taken it all so seriously for so long. It's funny. There's a beautiful line in the New Testament, lest you become as a child, you shall not know the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is your natural state. And it's like that childlike state where you watch kids in a playground just running around going mental. They don't give a shit what the government's doing. They don't care less about the Prime Minister, what's happening at work. None of that. They don't have all that. It's like enlightenment puts you back in touch with that mindset that doesn't have all that. It's like, I don't give a shit. I care about you. I love you as mind over here. I've got to keep moving my thing. I love you as this bodily thing that you appear as in the dream with me is no more important to me than my bodily thing here, which is completely ridiculous. This avatar thing. It's just completely mind-blowingly ridiculous and unimportant. But whilst it seems to last, it has a purpose, which is to represent the highest possibility for human potential, I guess, if you want to put it that way, which is in this case to demonstrate through my incredible whiteboard here the nature of the Holy Spirit and how it is that you transcend the world through forgiveness, not by transcendence, not by trying to meditate so hard that you put your mind in another sphere, because then when you come back into your bodily association, everything is still fucked up, right? All of these concepts and principles and ideas of attack and defense in the world have to be healed. They have to be forgiven and flipped over to a healed place so that they become the rungs on a peaceful ladder, right? And you'll know if you flip them over because you'll be grateful to that person who pushes your buttons. So, wow, thanks for pushing my buttons and showing me that I still have anger in here. Get it? Thanks for pushing my buttons and showing me that I still have jealousy. Wow, I'm trying to leave the world behind. I'm trying to transcend this nature of thinking into a more spiritual or higher level of thinking, higher level of awareness of self. And you're helping me to do that. Prior to realizing that there's any kind of spiritual possibility for you to involve yourself in at all, you had no choice but to feel angry and victimized and all of these things. But now you can flip that over. It's like, wow, that person's playing a part for me in my story, in my dream, right, to help me wake up over here and return my mind to God, to the formlessness of spirit, and end my need to participate in the cyclical nature of reincarnation, if you want to put that. But just remember that reincarnation is no more real or no more actual than the dream itself. A dream has no reality whatsoever other than that which you give it. Think about that. If you truly knew this was a dream, why would you react at all to any of it? Easy to say. Alright, well, I love you, and I hope that's kind of helpful. And oh, look, 21 minutes. All those people that tuned out before, boo.